how can entrepreneurs get premium shelf space in a fridge?
Boy, you're asking some tough questions. Getting premium shelf space is very challenging. When you go into the big leagues, you have to play with the big boys. That comes with a lot of financial strain and being able to pay sometimes for shelf space.
Hello and welcome to That's Over Everything podcast. This is the podcast where we receive stories, tips, and tactics from entrepreneurs who have done it. I'm Alex.
And I'm Ono Sinde.
And today we have a treat for you. I always say treat, but
Literally
we have a treat.
This is a
for you.
treat. This is definitely a treat.
We have the CEO and founder of Sweet and Nice Ice Cream.
Hey.
Andrew McBarnett. How you doing, sir?
Good, man.
Start me up, man.
Hey.
Good to have you on. Appreciate you.
Yeah,
Andrew,
good to
see
be
you,
here.
man.
Good to be here.
Yes, sir.
So honestly, thank you for joining us on the podcast. I'm excited to talk to you. And for everybody listening, I want to give my personal testimony. I'm lactose intolerant.
Mm-hmm.
I am lactose intolerant. So it is a big hill for me to climb and a sacrifice, if you will, to eat ice cream. So I'm very selective. And I tried this ice cream years ago, and it was one of the top ice creams I've ever had. Point blank, period. You know, I love the rum and raisin and the pineapple. I think it's the pineapple and coconut.
Yeah, pineapple coconut, yeah.
Most definitely, man. So off the top, I can already say you can, trust us to go to your local store and enjoy the ice cream, all right? Because it's available at Sobeys, Metro. It's everywhere.
Yeah, practically most of the major retailers now.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
So the way the conversation is going to go, we're going to talk about your early life and it's a journey coming up to it, and then the business and getting into like building Sweet and Nice to where it currently is.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. Talk to us about Trinidad and your heritage, and growing up in Trinidad.
Yeah, well, born in San Fernando. Might not sound like it, but I'll explain that later on.
Okay.
And grew up there in San Fernando. For those of you guys who don't know, it's South Trinidad, as we say, it's South Massive. And grew up there, went to high school, have good-sized family, 2 brothers, 2 sisters, mom and dad, obviously. And both parents were teachers, so had to hit the books. I was one of those guys who didn't like the books. Loved my football or soccer, but always loved business as well. So after high school, then went up to the UK to finish up my education in terms of doing business at university, and then stayed there for a while. Got married, and then eventually immigrated to Canada because most of my family who lived in England and really good cousins that I lived there with first, then moved out on my own, then got married, and they all left, came to Canada. And most of my family lived in Canada because they all lived in Trinidad before, and then I think it was like I woke up one morning in like the late 80s and they all disappeared. They all moved to Canada, right? So it's like, where did everybody go?
What was attracting them to Canada at the time? Like, what was so prominent?
I think one of my, 2 of my uncles had moved here probably in the 70s, I think. Yeah. And then I believe Trinidad may have been going through a difficult time. So a lot of them immigrated here and then, set up. And then I came years later when everyone was established and that sort of thing. I was married for a couple of years. We came for my cousin's wedding, and then my wife and I decided, hey, you know what? I think we want to move here, raise a family here. All our family is here because we were living in England, and it was like not getting to go to any family reunions, any gatherings, that sort of thing. And
those long distance calls too.
Exactly, right? Back then there was no VoIP.
There's no WhatsApp.
You gotta buy like a little card from the kiosk and everything like that, Vodafone and all that stuff.
So yeah, we were just missing out, and decided to move over here. My granddad, who started the ice cream, as the story goes, he was a sugarcane farmer. And then he got fed up of waiting for the end of the season to get paid because you plant your crop, cut it down, ship it to the sugarcane mill, and then you get paid for your crop. So he decided to do something that was like every day. I think he had a saying, as my uncles and aunts have said, you spend every day, you should earn every day.
Yeah.
So he decided to self-teach himself ice cream. So he started off, I believe, at coconut, mango, waking up early, getting the real fruit with the coconut, grating it, boiling it, churning it, that sort of thing. And he had 12 kids. And most of them, I think if I can count, at least 9 of them immigrated out of Trinidad, basically.
Yeah.
Right. So again, most of the family was here, I think I was pretty young when he was elderly. So I met him a couple of times, enjoyed the ice cream, free ice cream, which was good, a couple of times as well from him. But it was always a passion in our family, the Neal family, to enjoy ice cream and good food and that sort of thing. So, when I moved over here, my cousin Stafford and myself started, toying with the idea of restarting the company. And I was going into grocery stores here and seeing nothing that resembled really good ice cream.
Exactly.
And so we decided to restart the ice cream. Luckily, my aunt Rosemary, who immigrated in the 80s as well with the rest of the family, when they all disappeared, was here, and she was actually doing the ice cream still, at family reunions or events and that sort of thing, or selling it at church to raise money for church and that sort of thing too. We approached her and said, hey, why don't we restart things? And the cool thing was, she was the last person who worked with her dad before he passed away and learned all the recipes. And actually, she, in Trinidad, when they were going through a difficult time, they actually did the ice cream for a couple of years as their full-time business. So she knew it really well, like the back of her hand, in terms of the recipes. She's a mean dessert chef, if you ask me, right? But when she came there, she did banking all over years and that sort of thing. So we got her to say, we went to her house there, to Rosemary, join us, do the ice cream. We'll do the business side of things, and get things going. And that's how it all started, basically. And this was I think in 2011, 2012, basically.
Damn, that's kind of recent when you think about like in a brand shelf life. It's like not too long ago.
Yeah,
no.
It feels like it's been here for decades. The packaging, how established it looks. It looks like it's been here for. If you were to compare that to Breyers or
Ben and Jerry's,
those have been here for decades and decades.
It's like legacy ice cream.
You know what I'm saying? So I think it's really good on you to showcase how long you've been able to, not how long, but how fast you've been able to catch up. You know what I'm saying? So let's get into a bit of the development process. Let's start off with the pitch, talking to your auntie, right? Like, how did that go? What was her gripes and I don't know, how did you convince her?
It didn't take too much to convince her. I mean, because she was doing stuff, like I mentioned, at church and that sort of thing. She enjoyed doing it, and she did it previously in Trinidad, right?
Yeah.
And was the last one to really work with Granddad. So it wasn't too hard to convince her to do it. I think what we did was we bought an electric ice cream pail and brought it over to her and that sort of thing to test things out. That's where like the chief taste tester came in, because I was just around there tasting stuff. So
that's the best job ever.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Tasting ice cream.
Had to work out after though, but
burn all that sugar off.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, it didn't take too hard, because I think with the ice cream and it's Neal's Sweet and Ice ice cream, so there's a bit of a legacy there with Granddad and him working pretty hard to raise 12 kids, doing ice cream, because when I was around and when he was around, He wasn't riding his bike or anything like that. He was selling it out, customized type of cars, if I remember it. But when he first started, it was a bike, and he had to,
Classic.
do his own thing, design the front, make sure that the ice could pack in there. It's hot in Trinidad, right? And if you're riding around all day selling ice cream, gotta make sure that thing's cold so it keeps all day. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't hard to convince her because of the legacy behind it, the family legacy behind it.
Amazing,
man. What I want to know is like your dad starting the ice cream. Like, who taught him how to make the ice cream? How long was he in business? So, for example, like he started the ice cream. When he left or passed away, what happened with the ice cream to make Aunt Rosemary start picking it up and doing it herself?
Yeah, I think I believe as the story goes, he did it all himself in terms of taught himself how to make ice cream.
self-taught.
And again, back then it wasn't. It was all natural stuff, right? You get the dairy, you melt the milk, you get the ice, you churn it yourself for hours until it comes in, and and then you sell it, right?
Make the ice cream.
So that's what he did, and he added tons of flavors. I think I was speaking to my uncle as well, and didn't even realize that he actually owned a couple cafes as well that he sold it through, in addition to the bikes that he had out there. Yeah, he owned a couple cafes, about 3 cafes, I think, 2 to 3 cafes in San Fernando, and this other place called Marabella in South. So they grew up around the ice cream. All the boys were involved in, churning the ice cream before they went to school, and the girls as well were doing stuff. So it was part of what they did for years. So again, in terms of her knowing the ice cream, it came natural to her, and at the end of his life, and when she took it over at the end, she was doing it kind of to support him and then for her livelihood as well. So she knew the recipes and everything and how to run a business like that too, basically.
So what was the next step once you convinced your aunt to come on board? What was the next step that you and your co-founder took?
Yeah, well, I mean, this isn't my first rodeo in business. When I first moved to Canada, before moving to Canada, I was involved in terms of like product management, more in terms of the technology side of things, involved in investment banking, that sort of thing back in the UK. Those were my first kind of gigs, Morgan Stanley, ABN AMRO.
This is a trend, eh?
Yeah.
I notice a lot of guys within those type of industries, like they have a solid career, like, they'll be McKinsey, Bain, and then boom, entrepreneur. And like, what changes in your mindset? You see your aunt and you're like, what, I'm going to give this entrepreneur thing a shot.
You know what it was, I think? I was at those, you hear those names and you go, yeah, great. Those are fantastic companies. And I mean, they're great companies to work for and you learn a lot.
Yeah.
But then I decided to leave that and go into the .com world, all the lights of the .com world in terms of like startups and that sort of thing.
And what year is this, by the way?
That would have been just before the bust. So that would have been like 98 or so. So still young, out to university, that sort of thing. So yeah, I did that and learned a lot, because when you go into a startup, you have to wear many hats, and that's what I did for this company. So learned a lot doing that. And then my wife, Beth, and I moved here a couple of years later, based on my experience, but couldn't get a job with no Canadian experience.
Man, that's the worst. Trust me, my dad went through that like so many times. Like he comes here with like degrees in accounting, and then you're told you need Canadian experience.
Exactly.
Then the Canadian experience is like just any job that shows you've worked in Canada.
Exactly.
It's so demeaning sometimes just to see your parents do jobs that they're so overqualified for just for the sake of Canadian experience. Yeah, it's not fair.
Exactly. So anyway, when I moved, I encountered that, and then started a technology company and ran that for a couple of years. So did that and learned quite a lot in terms of doing that, in terms of working with clients and that sort of thing, and selling into clients, both here, the US and the UK, and did that for a number of years. So it taught me in terms of setting things up, running a business plan, understanding the market, adjusting things to the market, because we pivoted the company a couple of times in terms of the software company. So when it came to the ice cream, before we started it, I did things like market research, looked at, the size of the container it was actually a decision in terms of looking at, where we wanted to fit in. At the time when we were launching the ice cream, demand for ice cream was actually going down, but the premium side of the market was going up. And that was because people were eating more healthy, but when they wanted to escape something good, they wanted it to be really good.
Yeah.
So that's why we decided to do all of that. So in terms of get the next step, it was basically, doing the market research, seeing where we would fit in, understanding where the gaps were, and then, jumping in basically.
Man, all right. So I want to...
You're an unpack there.
Yeah,
There's so much to unpack.
Yeah, because, with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of them don't do market research. And it's a profitable business for businesses to fail. When businesses have to pivot and continuously, try and do new things. So let's talk about market research. What were some of the key things you found, and what was your strategy doing the market research?
Yeah, so I mean, I did all the market research myself, but basically the key things that I looked at was, one, where would we want to position ourselves against the market? Against existing customers, and of course, who is there, like the Ben and Jerry's and the Haagen-Dazs, and then you got the Chapmans and that sort of thing. So I looked at what the key trends were, and the key trends were there was a growth in terms of ethnic products. Number one, the taste, because Canadians travel quite a lot. And I knew that because the previous business that I was doing was technology, but it was tied to travel as well. And Canadian taste, and there's a lot of immigration as well into Toronto. So I thought, hey, there's an opening here. There's a good diaspora from the Caribbean. So if we start off with that, then we could grow it from there to other Canadians who travel a lot and willing to try stuff. And again, in terms of the the product itself, we chose to stick to an all natural, because again, the demand for decadent stuff was there, but also people wanted to understand the ingredient list. So those are the kind of key things we stuck to, and we still stick to today.
Yeah, you notice even. I've noticed that trend 6-7 years ago. Everybody's caring about what goes into it. Yes. And even the obsession of counting calories. Yes. It reminds me of this Seinfeld episode where there's this yogurt shop, and it's non-fat yogurt and non-fat ice cream, and everybody's obsessed with counting calories, especially with ice cream, because we all want to indulge in it, but the amount of calories that can impact you if you eat it every day as a pastime, as a dessert. And I've noticed that. So did you cater to that audience as well? Because when people pick up ice cream, the first thing they're looking at is, okay, how many calories is it per scoop?
Yes. So we had to make a choice, right? And again, in terms of the market research, we looked at where we would fit, because we knew that we may not be the healthy choice, but we could still fit into that category because we were natural. But we also chose to be on the decadent side of things, in terms of thinking, if somebody wants to have ice cream, they want something that's natural, but they want something that's real and good. So basically, we didn't cater for the calorie counting person. We catered for someone who wanted to snack on something, at the end of the week when they did all their workout and they thought, hey, I would cheat a little bit with and treat themselves. Exactly, they would have all ice cream, basically.
It's a little guilty pleasure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Most definitely. And with that said, let's try some ice cream, because we don't want it to melt.
Exactly.
So
I've been eyeing the ice cream for some time. I'm ready to dig in.
So let's take a second and try some ice cream, and we'll get back into the conversation.
So I was saying, you bring your dad's recipe back, you want to manufacture it. Getting to the science of manufacturing ice cream, if you're doing multiple flavors, especially your dad's specific ingredients, do you have to is there a base recipe, then you just add flavors, or do you have to reinvent the process again for a guava or mango?
Our ice cream, of course, I can't tell you the secret, or else I'll have to shoot you. But basically,
next thing you know, I'm in business tomorrow.
But essentially, when we started off with mango and coconut, and those were different flavor profiles. So we actually, when we did our recipes, each ice cream was different. Today we've done, again, improvements behind the scenes, that sort of thing. So you may taste our ice cream maybe 5 years ago. It's a little bit different today, but it's still the same quality, that sort of thing. And then we've done things in terms of, to make the operational process a lot more efficient. So there may be one or two flavors that could be combined, like let's say, pineapple coconut and coconut can be done together, or maybe guava. Can be done together within the same run, and then fruit is added and that sort of thing, basically.
All right. So a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't have startup funding. They have friends and family around, and friends and family say F off. You know what I'm saying?
Flip the bird.
Yeah. So I want you to break down that partnership part that you just mentioned, because I think that's very critical for a lot of entrepreneurs. So when you say partnership, how were they getting something out of what you were doing?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, what we looked at was who can we partner with that can help us now, that in the long run, there'd be a financial benefit for both of us.
So you're saying I partner with you today, and I incentivize you off of the lifetime value.
Yeah.
So you're saying, all right, if I partner with you now, I'll be cheap. Let's say out of $100, I'm $50, but it'll go for 10 times the time because I'll stay with you.
Yeah.
So is this like a long-term contract you have to make? Is that what you're saying?
Well, more long-term relationship,
Okay.
because that's how I look at things, right? It's in business, it's all about relationships.
Facts.
And if you're able to build really good relationships where there's always a win-win, then and a lot of times other people who've been in business would see an entrepreneur coming up and would go, you know what? I see myself in that person. I want to help them. So that's what happened, with me in terms of, the way I do things. I'd probably say my skill set is building relationships. That's what I do well. So in the beginning, that's what I did. I looked for relationships, told people about what we were trying to do. People were intrigued with the story, and then decided to say, hey, you know what? I want to be a part of this because, for example, Dr. Goff, we didn't pay him anything. He just heard what we were trying to do,
vision.
And he was like, Caribbean ice cream? That's really interesting. I'll help you guys out.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So we did that, and that became a part of our story in terms of working with the University of Guelph, them helping us do our first little batch to make sure it was right, the consistency, all the little recipe things that you had to figure out, so that when you manufacture mass, it would stay the same. So we got a lot of help from that at the beginning, basically. So and yeah, today we probably, I think with the University of Guelph, we've done a lot of stuff in the past in terms of when we brought new recipes out, going back to their food division to get it analyzed, to get our nutritional values done, that sort of thing. And the same thing with our food scientist companies. Whenever we manufacture today, because they actually did stuff for us in terms of like our rum and raisin mix, that sort of thing, that's where it all comes from.
When you're looking at starting a food business or a snack business and you want to get, market acceptance for it, how do you go on about testing the flavors before putting it out on the shelves?
Well, I think for us, we probably were a bit cocky in terms of thinking that we had a really great product.
You're like, I'm just going to dash this out there. and it's going to sell.
Yeah, we thought, yeah, it's going to work, man. But the other side of the equation was that, Anti-Rose did a lot of that too, in terms of like at church and that sort of thing. And, so we had that type of market research. But when we did our first small run, what we did was, myself, my cousin, my aunt, we went out on a Saturday and we tried to get it into a lot of the Caribbean grocery stores, and some of the Chinese grocery stores as well. And then they gave us an opportunity and said, okay, come, we'll put you on the shelf, come next week, do a demo, and we'll see how it goes. And if it goes well, we'll order more from you. So that's what we did. So we went in, we did a bunch of demos Saturday mornings, wake up really early. You know, I didn't have kids at the time, which was good. So ran down there.
Time.
Free
All
time.
the time.
My wife, you know, bless her, is good to me. So basically went down there, did demos and that sort of thing, got direct market feedback. So it was really good. I mean, there are times when people go like, you know, we had to perfect our demo messaging in terms of, you know, hey, come try some Caribbean ice cream. And then people go like, what's Caribbean ice cream?
Yeah.
You know, what is that? So what's the difference between Caribbean ice cream and your ice cream? And the answer would be like, well, if you try it, then you know, right? So lots of people would try it. I mean, I had a lot of fun times doing it. I remember this, I think we were in Brampton doing a demo at a Chinese supermarket, and this massive guy, you could tell he's like a bodybuilder, right?
Yeah,
he just like came from the gym or something, and I said, hey, try our mango ice cream, try our Caribbean ice cream. And he was like, and he walked away. And he may have been from, you know, India or Pakistan, that sort of thing. And then I said like, oh, mango ice cream. And then he was like, what? Mango ice cream? So he came back and he tried it, and the guy bought a load and went home, man.
Wow.
So it was pretty funny. But the other thing too that's been really cool is that, which I missed demos for, is that we would actually meet people that knew Granddad. So people would go like, hang on, did you see Niels? I remember him when I was a kid. I used to wait for his bell and wait for him to be like on a Sunday, sweet and nice, and buy my ice cream from him. And when I didn't have money, he would give me some for free. So it's been really cool and an encouragement as well to actually come face to face with people who knew him. Right?
Do you feel that pressure though, like when you hear older folks saying, I knew your grandfather, and like now you're carrying on his legacy? How does that weight on your shoulders?
It's a weight, man, but it's a good weight, I think, because I a lot of times, you know, they would have a lot of great words of encouragement. So basically, you know, it's a nice experience. I mean, a lot of times we meet people like that. I think there was a lady from Vancouver. She had contacted us and said, oh, you know, I remember your granddad and that sort of thing. She sent us an email, and we sent her some free ice cream. So it's great because it, you know, it impacts me, but it impacts my aunt even more, because of course she knew her granddad a lot longer than I did, right? So, but it's a blessing in terms of you know, meeting people who knew granddad.
Yeah,
no, that's beautiful. When you were going to these West Indian stores and these Chinese stores, that's actually, I think, where I discovered you. I think it was like a West Indian store on Markham and 401. No,
okay.
No, McCown and 401, if anyone wants to know. And what actually was piquing my interest is the fact that you went that route. What was the business behind that? Like, were you guys doing like a consignment? Because I know a lot of times to get that first few deals, so it's a lot tougher, right?
Yes.
So what was like the deal that you were like pitching to get those first few deals to get that ball rolling?
Yeah. A couple of times it would have been consignment. We were flexible in terms of the deal because we just wanted it on the shelf, and then we proved ourselves in terms of doing demos to get it off the shelves, right? And get that kind of brand awareness. We didn't have a lot of money doing, you know, marketing and all that sort of thing back then, so it was all about word of mouth. So yeah, that's exactly what we did. We did consignment at times. Some people would be kind enough to pay us when we brought it in, which was good because then that helped a little bit in terms of cash flow and went towards the next manufacturing round. So yeah, I mean, that's how we did things.
Got you. So that's like the business behind it. A lot of times when entrepreneurs are trying to get the things in the stores, like I know I used to work in a boutique. So that's one thing I actually see guys come in and do. They would just be, all right, listen, I ain't gonna buy your stuff, but you can put it here.
Yeah. And if it sells.
You get a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's big. All right, so you get it into these West Indian stores. And do you learn more about like shelving and that whole business from that point? Or do you think that once you got into the big stores is when you really started learning?
Yeah, when you got into the big stores, that's when you really started learning. Because I think, you know, with the West Indian stores, it was, and the Chinese stores, or the what we call the, you know, independent stores, we got a lot of learning in terms of people's feedback. So again, we started with the mango and coconut, and then every Jamaican we met was saying like, where's the rum and raisin? So we thought, hey, we got to do rum and raisin. raisin, basically, right?
Yeah.
So we got feedback. We did rum and raisin. We actually market tested the guava as well, because then we bought rum and raisin out and guava, and then finally we bought out pineapple, coconut. But yes, only when we got into the main stores that we really learned how to live in the big leagues, basically, and that was challenging in itself.
When you're like looking to get into a big retail store, for like those entrepreneurs out there, what are like some 3 steps that they essentially need to take with your experience to, have a shot?
Yeah, I would actually say there's one step. Keep knocking on the door, right? So, for us, that's what we've done. I mean, people are surprised when they hear that we actually did all the sales ourselves, our own team, including myself. With all of the chains, there's been no brokers in between and that sort of thing, right? So, which is a long step, but we've kept fighting in terms of doing that. So, and sometimes there's, the good God above and some luck. When we got into Sobeys, that was when I write a book, people go like, that never happened. But basically, we I went into Sobeys. They were just starting their local program. I think they were the first ones to bring out a local program in terms of helping local entrepreneurs get on the shelves, and giving them space and that sort of thing. So went in. And then, met this guy, and turns out to be from the UK. Turns out to be from
UK strikes again.
Turns out to be from Rumford, where I lived,
Get out of here.
and we hit it off right away.
Wow.
And basically they were what they call category buyers. So he was in charge of dairy, and he was only selecting one company to work with, and on the spot he selected us.
Without even trying the ice cream?
Yeah, no, he tried it. I brought samples and that sort of thing. He loved it. But again, being from the UK, he traveled a lot to the Caribbean, not just to Cuba, but again, Jamaica, Barbados, Grenada, that sort of thing, and enjoyed the stuff there. So he knew about the flavors. So he then gave us an opportunity, and it was scary because now you got to perform, right? And I remember that, I think we saw him it may have been before summer, and we thought, hey, we'd get in the summertime. Then, unfortunately, he left, and then someone else took over. Funny enough, it turned out to be a Trini that took over, basically.
Sounds like you're just having the best of luck everywhere you go.
It's trying hard because it took us about 2 years to get into Sobeys, right? Yeah. So it kept, we kept knocking on doors all the time, and buyers kept switching out, back and forth. So it was still tough getting in. But when we got in, he then put us on the shelves. I remember we rolled out, just before Christmas. So we're selling ice cream, when it's winter here, and rolling out a product in 5 stores. So they put us in 5 stores, and we did what we did. And again, because of the experience that we had at the independent stores, we knew exactly what to do. We went in there and just pushed demos like crazy. So, it did really well in the wintertime, before Christmas, and then we took a bit of a break and then fully launched again in the springtime the next year.
That's such a big gem that could go over a lot of people's heads, is doing local work. Going to the local markets and selling hand to hand. I heard a phrase that someone said where they were saying,
I'm gonna let you say, because I think I know where you're going with this.
Guess what I'm gonna say.
Do things that don't scale.
Damn. I'm pissed. So it was something along those very, lines. Very, 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 very similar. Is your first 100 sales have to be hand to hand.
Really?
First 100 sales. That's what caught me off guard. Is there any truth to that in your opinion?
There's a bit of truth to it, because I think that, if you don't do it yourself as the entrepreneur, you don't know the market feedback. I mean, I remember when my aunt and I went out there and we started selling it, we got a lot of no's, right? I mean, and which was fine. I mean, we kept pursuing it, being persistent, and we got some yeses, which encouraged us to continue on. But then when we got in, then again, the demos, lots of people said, no, I don't want to try that, you know, and then other people tried it, liked it, bought it, right? So I think that having that one-to-one experience initially, you know, is really good. I mean, like right now, again, when, you know, probably over 1,000 stores and all that sort of thing. Spent the last 2 years in the pandemic without any demos, right? So you just get the feedback in terms of, it, you know, directly from people on Instagram or wherever it is like that, right? But if we didn't have that original, you know, like you said, 100 sales hand to hand, then we wouldn't have gotten the feedback and known the potential of it as well, right?
Yeah. So I want to like triple down on this process of getting to stores, because I feel like it's where a lot of the community doesn't get that opportunity. A lot of people, you go to Kensington, we see the honey brands, we see the cannabis brands, but maybe that's gonna be a little tougher. But but you know what I'm saying? There's a ton of those, the shea butter brands.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying?
And they're always like in the small time stores, like, and you're thinking about like big time, like how do you get into the big time stores?
So let's dial in on the knocking down that door, right? So what was some of the steps and processes and advice that you would give to somebody trying to enter a Sobeys, a Metro, a Loblaws?
I think the key thing is that, like I mentioned, knocking the doors, but the second thing is being prepared, right? Because when we went to Sobeys, you know, it wasn't a case of, oh yeah, we'll put you on the shelf. They had to assess us and confirm that we can actually deliver what we said we could deliver, right? And that being that, okay, we had a manufacturing plant or co-packing partner in place, someone who can scale if we needed to grow the number of stores. Then the second thing is making sure that your product has a sort of product market fit in terms of there was demand out there. So I was able to say to this guy, well, hey, you know, we're at the time we were probably in about 30, 40 independent stores. So he was like, oh, that's really good. It shows that you're not just doing a Saturday thing, you're trying to grow this.
So some side
right?
hobby.
So all of those things were pretty important in terms of making sure that, because again, when you're going into these stores, remember, you're going into them to scale. You're not going into them to just be in 5 stores in Toronto.
And say I'm at Sobeys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to scale, right? And you want to make sure that in every store that there's a Sobeys or there's a Loblaws or wherever else that someone can go into it and purchase your product. So yeah, that's what I would say.
How do you go on about getting over rejected many times when you're trying to get into a retail store?
Yeah. You know, I could say that, I won't call names, but basically, you know, we took a while to get into, like, for example, we're prevalent and we have a really great penetration rate in Ontario, right? That's where most of our stores are, probably about 60%. The next province was Quebec, right? And so there's always challenges in terms of Quebec. We've had really good success in terms of independent stores in Quebec, but then getting onto the major stores in Quebec is always a challenge, right? Of course, being an Ontario brand, then, you know, there's a challenge there too, right? so basically, so we've been knocking on doors to get into Quebec for a long time. And last year, thankfully, we were able to get into Quebec through Loblaws. And this year, we're getting in with Sobeys. But again, it took quite a while in terms of keep on knocking the doors. Hopefully, you know, sometimes trends change. People are seeing things differently. Through the pandemic, again, you know, we grew because of a couple of things. One being local, 2 being black owned, and that has helped change people's perceptions in terms of a product. And for us, we see ourselves as we're an ice cream company that happens to be black owned, right? So So it really took a while in terms of like, again, knocking on doors with a lot of these major retailers to actually get in. And again, once you get into one, you got to prove yourself in terms of making sure and staying on the shelves. That's always a challenge as well. And then once you've done that, then the other retailers would see it, and we've had meetings where, oh, you're that brand, we've seen you before, right? So then it makes it easier to actually say,
So
okay,
it's like
hey.
retailers all talk. It's just like they all.
Oh yeah, they all talk.
It's a small club.
They go into each other's stores and see what's on the shelf and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. But for those guys listening in there, if you want to get into a major store, you got to make sure that you're prepared to do so, so that when you do get the opportunity, your viewpoint is scaling, right? Because for me, before we even got on a shelf, my dream was to not see it on the shelves in Canada, but to go back to the UK and see it on the shelves. So that's still my dream. Right.
Interesting.
Speaking of shelves, how can entrepreneurs get premium shelf space in a fridge?
Boy, you're asking some tough questions, man. I think that getting premium shelf space is very challenging, right? I think that, again, when you go into the big leagues, you have to play with the big boys. So that comes with a lot of financial strain as well, and being able to pay sometimes for shelf space. So in certain instances, we've been, lucky enough to be a local company and that sort of thing, and given access to shelf space. But when you want to pay for what they call like end caps and that sort of thing, where you're seeing the product at the end of the before you get down the aisle, that's really premium. So so sometimes you have to pay for that. Like ourselves, if you go into Loblaws chain store, you can get optimum points, right? You've got to pay for all of those things too, right? So it takes a while in terms of scaling and, all of that sort of thing.
You go, yeah, go ahead.
So hold on. So you just said, what was that? You said you have to pay for optimum points?
Of course.
Whoa, I didn't
We
know
never
that.
know. Yeah.
Hold on.
I thought optimum points just like scan my thing, I get points, I'm done.
No, man.
as
Retailers,
Really?
as a retailer, hopefully Optimum, isn't listening to this, but I mean that's the model. I mean, funny enough, before getting full time into Sweet and Nice, I mean, my background was loyalty,
Loyalty
right?
one, right?
Right? Yeah. So basically, as a retailer, as a vendor, you pay for access to
That's how
Optimum.
they make money.
But I mean, it's a great. It's that's how they make money. But again, from a consumer perspective, you got to look at it in terms of, hey, like my wife, she dies for Optimum points. Oh, I've got like 10,000 Optimum points, and I'm
saving
spending
my
it.
Optimum
And
points.
blah,
I'm
blah.
like, I was
Right,
eyeing a
see?
cologne. I'm like, when I get to 50K, I'm buying that Giorgio Armani cologne.
So,
You hoard
so
those
there
points.
So there you go, right?
Yeah.
There's something behind loyalty that drives people. So you got to be thinking about, all of those things in terms of like, paying for flyers, whether it was back then physical, digital, all of those things you got to think about, right? So because, you don't want to be sitting on the shelf and then your competitor next to you is on sale and you're not on sale, and all that sort of thing. I mean, the other challenge that you have as well is that entrepreneurs need to think about is distribution. Because, if you want to be a, let's say, with us, I'll probably kind of call us a pseudo-national brand, right? Because you could go to, BC and get us, or Quebec and get us, and that sort of thing. But how do you get the stuff from here to there, right? You need to have a good distributor, or a couple of good distributors to do that, and that costs, because of course that eats into your margin as well. So all of those things you got to think about in terms of like scaling.
All right, so it brings me to two questions. One, how do you find a distributor that's quality? Or are all distributors made the same, or once you get
No.
into... No. All right,
No.
so let's walk through that. Then after, I want to ask, what's the average, you don't have to give yours, of course, but what's the average profit margin of ice cream or food in general? I'd love to have that conversation right after. So stock distributors?
Yeah, with distributors, it's funny enough. I heard somebody say it the other day. It's like a marriage, basically. You got to find a good one, just like a co-packer as well. It's a marriage in terms of who is able to do your product, do it well, you're comfortable with. They can see that you're going to grow and all that sort of thing. So it's the same thing with a distributor. I think when we first started off, you're looking at the distributor, right? In terms of, me delivering stuff to stores
You're
and
Mr. Sweet
all
and
of
nice.
that sort of
You're
thing,
basically
right?
your grandfather.
Yeah,
Sweet and
so
nice.
I was doing all of that. I mean, my aunt did some of it as well, and all of that sort of thing, cousin and that sort of thing too. So, and then eventually we started paying someone to do it and that sort of thing. But then when you're starting to think about like, hey, we need to get the product to Alberta or here or there. So then you got to look for a really good distributor who would fit into your margin profile as you grow. There's always challenges around that in terms of like managing that too. But then you need to find someone who literally, again, it's all about relationships, believing in you, believing that you would grow. The distributor that we're with right now, we started off with them maybe about 4 years ago. And we were a lot smaller, and I would say they took a chance on us. And now we're a lot bigger, right? So basically they've seen the benefits of that in terms of us, starting off with Sobeys. Then we went to Loblaws, and now, growing in terms of like with Metro and a couple of other people too, right? So it's key in terms of finding someone who, and again, to the entrepreneurs out there, you may need to switch up your distributors as well, because you may start with someone, locally, right, who just does GTA and they've got a good margin profile. Then you're expanding, then you do that as well. So yeah, that's how we do it.
Would you ever go D2C? Would you ever go D2C? Direct to consumer?
Yes, we have done a bit of that online.
You have your own store, right?
Yeah, we have done a bit of that online and then retail store as well.
How did that go? Because I don't know, it must be a lot more difficult with ice cream. Right?
Yeah. Online stuff is it's completely difficult here in terms of doing that. It's much bigger in the States, but over here it's definitely still a challenge. Although during the pandemic it got a bit easier to do that sort of thing. But at the beginning of the pandemic, again, we didn't have any demos, so we did a pop-up store. Which worked really well in terms of getting people to come to us, try the ice cream, and then go back into retail. So that's probably something we'd look at later on down the line as well, in terms of having direct to consumer sales too.
Speaking about the pandemic, we were interviewing Steve Byfield of Nyarai Cellars. Are you familiar with that wine? He's like one of the only black wine sellers.
Yeah, I've heard about him.
Yeah. Did you see any boost in business by you being like an ice cream brand that's black owned during the pandemic, getting buzz, press, and how did that really impact your business in terms of like sales?
Yeah, I think 2020, with everyone being stuck at home and that sort of thing, we did see definitely increase in sales. The beginning of the year was terrible because then, no one knew what was going on.
Exactly.
We had signed up to go into both No Frills and Metro. Didn't go into those stores until the end of July, right? So like the end of the summer, basically. But it still worked out pretty well. And we again, for entrepreneurs out there, we had to get like a PR firm and all of that sort of thing as well on board. So basically we combined with the retail store, we did a lot of PR. And again, being black owned, we were picked up by a lot of media as well. So it did help in terms of brand awareness, for sure.
Most definitely. Now, speaking of brand awareness, we would be dum-dums if we talk about this. Dragon's Den.
Yes.
Oh, right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Let's talk about the experience on Dragon's Den, because a lot of us entrepreneurs, especially Canadian entrepreneurs, are like, should I go on Dragon's Den? All that kind of stuff, right? So what was your Dragon's Den experience like?
It was great, actually. It was pretty good. I mean, I always use the word petrifying in the same sentence too, because it was. When my cousin Stafford and myself decided to go on it, and we thought, hey, it's gonna be. I love the show, so we thought, hey, let's go on it, see what would happen, see if we would get in. Number one, because you got to go through like, filters of producers and that sort of thing. And, when we spoke to the producers, they loved it. They loved the idea. They loved the story. They actually, I can't remember whether we flipped a coin to ride on the bike or whatever, but basically, it was pretty good. And then when we went in, I mean, I would say we were lucky to be the first company in the morning time on the show in terms of going in to speak to the dragons. So that helped as well. They were all perky and happy.
They were
and
fresh.
All that,
They just had their Starbucks.
Coffeed up and all that sort of thing.
Ready
And then,
to write
of
a
course,
check.
then we're talking ice cream. So what could be wrong with that, right?
Yes.
So we went in, and it was tough in terms of the questions that they were asking. We were still young in terms of only in independent stores, right? And probably in about 40 stores, not much revenue, that sort of thing, doing a lot of the revenue over the summertime. So we spoke a lot about how we were going to talk about that and address some of those questions and that sort of thing. So, but it was a good experience. And then, on the show, we got a deal on the show. Didn't work out in the end after the show because you got to go through a whole mad load of due diligence and all that good stuff. But yeah, it did well in terms of raising our brand, and people still remember us today. And yeah, we're on Netflix.
That's you can say, you can catch you on Netflix.
You can like turn it on yourself and just look at yourself on Netflix sometimes.
Yeah.
That's fire. So talk about that. What were some of the things that they didn't like, once the Dragon's Den thing ended and they went back and were going back and forth? What were some of the lessons you learned there and what happened?
Yeah, I think the lessons we learned, was how to deal with due diligence because, as an entrepreneur, you don't, when you go into like funding and that sort of thing, it's one thing to do the deal. The second bit is the due diligence. And that was a bit tough in terms of like walking through it. We did a deal with 3 dragons. So we had to do like 3 due diligences. So that was tough.
No, I was thinking that.
And basically, so that was a stickler. And it took a long time and that sort of thing too. So it kind of fizzled a little bit too. So, again, good experience, but, and it taught us a lot because then we faced another dragon who's now a dragon. He wasn't a dragon when we faced him, right? So, and then we had to go through due diligence then too. So took the learnings from that, and by the time we met Wes, I was a bit more experienced corporately as well.
Understood the language, what they like to talk, strategy.
Yeah, exactly.
All the buzzwords.
All of that. Yeah,
Synergy.
all of that. Yeah, exactly. So, and then that helped basically.
All right, so for entrepreneurs that have not gone to due diligence, what are some of the things that we can prepare ourselves for when it comes to due diligence?
Yeah, I think the main thing that is looked at is basically two things. With companies, it's basically what your finance view was before, in terms of before that, at that point, in terms of, that person saying, yes, I'm interested in the idea, sounds really good. Now let me take a look at your books and, see what you've done in the past, and see whether there's a capability of us scaling this thing, right? With my cash coming in, and whether you're going to need, the initial cash, and then more cash. So, due diligence normally takes like a few months. Basically, it's not like a week, right? You're basically like, talking about everything that you're doing. So you look at your past stuff, but then you look at, to quote a corporate word, your strategic plan, right? And where you're looking to be in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and then what your actual valuation is, because then the person's coming into purchase, and then you've got to agree what that figure is that you're giving away, right? Together. So yeah, all of those things are the elements that are involved. Then of course you got all the legal paperwork. So the one party has their lawyer, you have your lawyer, and then you're going through back and forth. And it's how you deal with lawyers, it's like red lines everywhere. That sort of thing. So it took us, I think, when we met Wes, when I met Wes and he said yes, it may have been like June. We didn't close our deal until like August. right? So it does take a while in terms of due diligence and that sort of thing.
Wow. See, these are things you don't learn until you talk to people and really
There's some
figure it
secrets, like
You
we
know?
just think, yo, pitch the guy. Next thing you know, you got to check with him.
out. Says yes, and then they dap you up. All right, fam, here you go.
All right, I'm wiring the money tomorrow.
Never happens, man. Never happens. But I mean, and the honest truth is we need more of us to go through this type of thing and to talk about it and to open up about it, because there's some great companies out there, and if you're thinking about like growing your company, then you have to also think about, you look at the Googles, the Apples, they don't just get investment from their founders. They have to go outside and raise capital so you can scale, right? And do probably multiple rounds of capital as well. So I think because of my background in terms of the software side of things, it came with that too. So kind of helped too, basically.
Most definitely.
100%.
As we're towards wrapping up, where do you see Sweet and Nice going in the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, for us, definitely, we intend on growing and being, penetrating all the provinces. I think we're in most of the provinces now, but we want to be able to grow them, right? Like last year, we got into like 80 stores in Saskatchewan, right? And but then we have the East Coast, so we want to really grow some more. We want the West Coast, that we want to grow some more. We're in Vancouver and that sort of thing, but we want to grow out a bit more. So, and of course, like I mentioned, Quebec, we have definitely sides of really growing that. So it's, a good size of our business. I think for us too, innovation is key. We're innovating a bit. You may look at our website, you'll see stuff on there that's more than just ice cream. We've started doing rum cakes as well. So basically our intention is to get that into grocery stores and do some stuff with that as well too, and keep innovating on the ice cream side, because of course we're going to look at things like, lactose, vegan, that sort of thing too. Of course, there's always, south of the border, and probably trying to get it back into the Caribbean as well, and then finally into Europe, basically.
Yeah. You're a family man. In our community, we talk about generational wealth.
Yes.
I'm curious, are you getting your kids ready to take over the business one day? What's their interest? Are they involved?
Yeah,
Share more about that.
Again, as an entrepreneur, you got to know in terms of like what you're thinking about. So, who knows what would happen in terms of, whether or not there's like an exit or something like that, or we keep building and building and building, right? But I think for me, building the generational wealth is really important, especially as a Black person, and getting them to. I think for me, it's more. I enjoy, like when we had the store, getting my kids to come to the store and see Daddy's ice cream.
Yeah.
Or I think we were in Orlando on a family vacation and in Target, and I was saying to my daughter, hey, one day we're going to come to Target and you're going to see Daddy's ice cream here. So it's encouraging them to start thinking
That's
about
beautiful.
their own dreams.
Yeah.
And then, pursuing that basically. And that's important to me.
Because your legacy families out here, you said Chapman's that you called, that's like his grandson.
Yeah.
There's the Mars family, Mars family fortune.
Harry
Yeah.
Rosen.
Harry Rosen,
Yeah,
and you have the
yes.
McBarnett fortune one day.
Hopefully, man, God willing, one day.
Yeah.
One day.
That's a fact. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps the podcast. The hustle is what you can't control. So control your grind and control your life. I'm Alex.
And I'm Owen Osinde.
And I'm Andrew McBarnett.
And that's the show, y'all.
Peace.
Peace.
Have a great week, everyone.